Where are the low value men? Like, what are all the low value men up to during these trying times? Because the high value men, I know they're around. They won't shut the fuck up. Low value men, I have not heard a word out of. I'm starting to think I'm on their side. I think I want one of those. I want a low value man. They don't make podcasts. I haven't seen one low value man make a podcast. Do they not know how to use microphones? Maybe that's a good thing. That's hot. All right, I've never seen a man use a microphone for good.
Until now, everybody buckle up. It's low value mail time with your host, Danny Polishchuk. What is shaking, everybody? Welcome back to an all-new episode of Low Value Mail. This is episode number 108 on this. Man, it's June already, huh? June 3rd, 2024, the year of our Lord. I'm fresh back from Minneapolis. Shout out to anybody or everyone who came. The show's in Minneapolis. That was a fun time at the Mall of America. Surely you do not need to check that place out. All right, joining us today, we got an interesting one. We are joined by none other than Memoryhold. If you don't know who he is, he makes videos, documentaries, and he writes for the Memoryhold Substack, which I highly recommend you go check out. Before we bring him on, please hit that like button if you're watching over on Rumble, if you're watching over on YouTube. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, because some of you watch this, but you don't subscribe because YouTube knows you so well that it just shows you the channel, but then you're like, I'm not subscribed to the channel. So subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the show, if you like what we're doing over here at Low Value Mail, you can do so for $5 a month. You can sign up at patreon.com/lowvaluemail, MAIL. Honestly, the main thing you get is you get one of these fancy wrenches, and then if you're an audio listener, you get the audio episodes ad-free. I'm trying to figure out stuff to add, but because it's a live call-in show, I've just never really been able to figure out something good to do. So, and if you ever have ideas, sign up for the Patreon, pitch me stuff. I'm open to it. Tomorrow night, we are back with an all-new episode of The Bathhouse. Joining me will be Robbie the Fire Bernstein, Lev Fur, and Derek Drescher. We were supposed to have other people, but they canceled last minute. They're going to be rescheduled, specifically Naeem and Drew from Do-Rag and the Deer Tag. And if you'd like to see me doing stand-up comedy, if you live near Rutherford, New Jersey, catch me this Saturday night at the Icarus Festival in Rutherford, New Jersey at the Williams Center. Robbie's going to be there doing stand-up. It's like a weekend kind of festival thing. Jimmy Dore's going to be there. There's going to be a whole lot of people there. A lot of cool people that I'm sure some of you know. So if you're around, I'll be doing stand-up, but I'll be kicking around. So come out to that. Otherwise, I'll be in Edmonton and Vancouver coming up. You can go to my website, DannyComedy, notgay.jew.com for tickets. All right. Without further ado, let's get this puppy on the road. Where's my thing? Oh, yeah, here we go. Do this little move. We go that. Memoryhold, are you there, sir?
What's going on? Can we hear each other?
Yeah, I can hear you just great.
Excellent. Very complicated here. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're doing high-tech shit over here, man. Wait till the phone calls start pouring in, and then you'll see.
Oh, I'm ready.
It's high-tech city over here. So, Memoryhold, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate this very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You were recently on the War Mode podcast. The War Mode boys were actually on this show live in studio, and that was a mess, but it was a fun time. We had a damn good time. So, for people who don't know you, please tell them a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. So I go by Memoryhold online. Real name is Tyler. I started making videos around 2017 about, I guess, conspiracy theories is the layman's term, but I like to bring a more factual basis to them in terms of only dealing with the objectively verifiable information. I saw that. I don't want to say there was a drought of that type of conspiracy-related content out there, but I thought that the community could benefit from people doing a little extra legwork in terms of data aggregation, making the links readily available, making sure things are archived, essentially aggregating important pieces of data and finding creative ways to distribute that out to the public. And for me, that's through long form lecture videos and different documentaries. I've made about, I think, 2 or 3 documentaries that are on the alternative platforms, but mostly long form lecture presentation content. And I've just recently started the Substack, as you mentioned earlier. Writing is kind of where I came from, but I ended up sort of getting into the videos when I stumbled on the elections in 2016, where I just realized, things were not really right. In fact, I used to be against everything that I do now. So I'm kind of like a poster boy for I fact checked my way here. That's the interesting thing.
Against how? How so?
So what I did was I took like the most outrageous statements, that people were making. And the fun of it essentially was, okay, how realistic is what he's saying? How plausible are these statements? Number one, where do they come from? I mean, that's an absurd statement. We hear absurd statements online all the time. Most people disregard them. 95% of the time, you would be correct to do so. But I think in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been some significant events that have gone on that I guess sort of should convince anybody to, hey, let me scrutinize that just a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't write that off so quickly. Maybe I should do my due diligence a little bit further. That's what set it off for me, was just saying, okay, this statement is absurd, but where does it come from? They're not necessarily pulling things out of thin air. They're usually inspired by something. What is that something? Sometimes you find out, okay, wow, that guy wasn't kidding. I mean, I don't think he's 100% correct, but even 10% correct is crazy enough for me. It's a lot of that. Working backwards, teaching people how to, prove that things are either ridiculous or plausible or even true. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Justifying the asking of questions, I think, is a good way to put it.
And what keeps getting you kicked off of YouTube? Because you're on, it appears to be number 5.
Yeah, it's
Memoryhold
absurd.
5.0, you can check them out.
That's it. Yeah, admittedly, I deal with risky content. It's mostly the debunked pizza-related conspiracy Epstein type stuff, weedy territory. But I thought there was a lot of information and evidence that was intriguing enough behind those claims to cover them. And mostly what I would do is do exactly like I mentioned before, portray to people, okay, this is the pool of information we got on the pizza-related stuff or the Epstein-related stuff. Let's chop down what's false about it. Let's just get that right out of the gate. What's false about it, so we have what's true left over. And that's brought me this far. And of course, I've covered all sorts of topics, but I think that's mostly what I'm known for. Mostly because when you look into topics like that, you get some real interesting folks, to put it lightly, people that I don't really resonate with at all.
So what is, before we get to what's true about it, what is untrue about the Pizzagate stuff?
So for one, I don't like the entire idea that the entire theory is based on the most horrific allegations of these satanic rituals that are happening in the basement of a pizza place. That these politicians, Podesta, namely Hillary Clinton, are directly, personally involved, like they're there overseeing the operation. Before the Comet stuff, that pizzeria came into the picture, it was more generally about the expansive connections that these people have to multiple confirmed predators and alleged confirmed predators. Most of us go through our lives without ever really being accused by one, let alone 2 people. But, there's a few of those in the mix. And it was after the discovery of Comet that we sort of got pigeonholed into that. And of course, the loudest voices became sort of defined what the theory was. The people that were saying the most ridiculous stuff and would later kind of end up jumping on the Q train. No offense to all the Q followers out there, but a lot of those folks jumped on the Q train when that came around. That these people are up to human sacrifices, that they're eating kids, or what they could be. We don't have any proof of that. My thing was just more about, why aren't we allowed to just ask for an answer regarding this, and they would deflect away from that. There's a lot untrue about Pizzagate, but number one, the mainstream definition of it is probably the most blatant. it's difficult to define, but that's probably the most blatant falsehood there is. But that's more about the media too. The most popular thing that it drives me crazy to see, but you'll often see this list. It's a screenshot from 4chan, usually shared, and it's a list of these supposed code words. You know, hot dog equals this,
Sure.
ice cream equals this, walnut sauce equals this. Anybody that's been sort of active or pumping shoulders with that, they probably would have seen that picture. And it drives me crazy because it puts things into this nice, tidy box as if, yeah, that's exactly what we were all thinking when investigating it, which it wasn't really like that at all. So I don't really abide by, you know, a lot of what's shared because of a lot of it's just simply incorrect. The Tony Podesta, John Podesta police sketches, you know, of Madeleine McCain, I think was the one of the was it Madeleine McCain? One of the little girls that went missing abroad. You know, John Podesta, you know, he had some type of property right down the road, and the only emails that are missing from the Podesta emails was the span of time that this girl went missing. The police sketches look mysteriously like Tony and his brother. Like, that stuff is wacko, right? And so it's things like that. And of course, that's what gets circulated the most.
Yeah, and that's probably the stuff that's the most kind of salacious and kind of best stuff to like discredit the entire thing. It is, I mean, obviously a pretty crazy story, but there's no shortage of these, you know, pedophile type. Like I had Nick Bryan on the show, and he
great,
the Franklin scandal, and you know that seems pretty above board, all the shit he's talking about, and and fairly well documented, right? Where people would probably say that's crazy.
Exactly. And you know what? Honestly, that's the type of stuff that I didn't know existed. That when I discovered that information, it sort of put things in a new framework for me. I mean, I was approaching all of this quite literally from that's totally baseless. That's completely absurd. Let me take a look. And I didn't come away saying, oh, yeah, it's 100% real. But I came away learning all this other contextual historical information, like the Franklin scandal, like the Finders cult, like Jeffrey Epstein, you know, and that was the thing during 2016 too, where we were kind of telling people on the left side, it's like, look, if you really want to prevent the election of President Trump, you'd be going after him for his Epstein connections, you know. So, you know, whether they're as bad as people say or not, who's to say? I'm just saying that, you know, those things were ignored, but you learn about all these historical instances of like really crazy abuse that's systemic, organized, widespread, and
do you have some examples?
Mostly what I'm talking about is Jeffrey Epstein, the Finders cult, and the Franklin scandal. There's probably some other examples that I'm not really there was one at the BBC as well. I forget the name of that scandal though. There's Savile. Then there is the BBC one could have been wrapped up with Savile though. So those two stories might actually be. But
essentially just like mind. Pedophiles who were getting covered for, and then in the Franklin scandal, wasn't like they're getting covered for. It's like it was almost a mechanism of like these higher ups to be able to kind of, I guess, do what they needed to do. So I saw in your Substack you had a post about Diddy and Pizzagate, or some connection between the two. Can you
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at Diddy, of course, we have to be careful, innocent until proven guilty, right? But there are some really serious allegations out there. I'm sure you've discussed it on your show, but we've got multiple lawsuits. But namely, some of the ones that are the most damning. The Cassie lawsuit was one thing. I think that was last November. But then we had the Lil Rod lawsuit. Now, if you read that lawsuit, it almost reads as a movie. It's absolutely wild in terms of what this guy is claiming. He's a producer. He worked heavily with Diddy on, I forget the name of the album, but this was years ago. And he spilled the beans on essentially, allegedly, what he's seen. And we're talking about, once again, the hidden cameras on his property. We're talking about private yacht parties in the Virgin Islands. So that same general vicinity as Epstein and his crew. And of course, the drugging and the assaulting of women, both above age and underage. And then Diddy was also known as that guy that would have those lavish parties. I mean, he was even equated to a Gatsby-like figure, a social icon that sort of fused all these separate dimensions of entertainment, whether it's movies, music, you name it, right? And Epstein was very similar in that way. He was mixing with scientists, he was mixing with, celebrities, psychiatrists, all different sorts. So he would bring them together, and they would have these lavish parties where the most powerful people, some of them, either way, the biggest stars in the world would show up to these white parties. And apparently what he would have at those parties are these freak-off contests, and they were sexual in nature, of course, but a lot of the times there ended up being underage girls there, right? And numerous allegations have come out about the drugging as well. Apparently they would have like a separate stash of alcohol. So when the girls would be served, they wouldn't notice a seal broken because it was in the chaser. It wasn't in the alcohol, it was in the chaser.
Okay.
So that's how they did that. But the hidden camera aspect is huge because number one, this is somebody that has gotten away with this man has shot people allegedly, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps more than once, we don't know. He's bragged about it, according to Lil Rod in the lawsuit.
Didn't he blow up someone's car?
He did. I actually haven't heard that, but I would not doubt it. I mean, we had
some rapper. I don't think it was Meek Mill, but some rapper was like he blew up his car or something.
I would not doubt that at all. I mean, the conspiracy theories and speculation around Diddy and his more malicious side stretch all the way back to Tupac, Biggie Smalls, and the hits back then. But when you've got somebody that mysteriously skirts the law, I mean, I didn't know how egregious his criminal record was, right? I had no idea. I mean, he's thrown like an event where like 9 people got trampled to death. You know, he got smuggled a gun, discharged it. He ran away from the police, like just crazy. New York, famously.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Just these crazy instances. And we see that because, Epstein, that's the type of character that also gets away with similar things, almost as if he's sort of protected in a way. And in a sweetheart deal back in 2007 with Epstein, we had Acosta sort of straight up say, hey, this guy is above my pay grade. I remember that. And it's like, what are you talking about? You're the guy that's supposed to these weird instances of getting away with something where it's sort of like an open secret about him. Harvey was the same way.
Yeah.
Everyone said, oh, we all knew. Yeah, like, okay, but nothing happened. Why is that? You all knew, but what? So I have a sneaking suspicion that the Diddy case is going to explode. I think personally, this is just my opinion, I do think he's going to end up being arrested. I think it's going to take a little while. I think it's a complex case. But, if my idea is correct about him being protected, perhaps it all goes away. That's what other people are saying and speculating about. If he's part of some honeypot operation. That's
sure.
with all the hidden cameras. And that's what they said. He's got
now,
thousands of hours.
How would his go away when, obviously Epstein originally it did kind of go away and then it came back out to light. What do you think Diddy, because, to take the other side of it with the Diddy thing, you're just like, yeah, that's rappers have been doing that shit forever. R. Kelly was dating Aaliyah and when she was 13 and, that's just kind of par for the course for stuff that they do. And now I don't know the whole blackmail element or the Diddy thing. So that would be a separate element.
Yeah, and that is, of course, like using that term blackmail is, of course, speculative because we don't know that's what he's actually doing. But just the presence of an abundance of cameras inherently sort of gives him possession of like very sensitive footage. Now, whether he actively uses it for malicious purposes, that's where you phase into the line of like, okay, blackmail, extortion or whatever. We don't know if he's doing that. However, Lil Rod in his lawsuit did allege that in one circumstance, he did use footage to coerce either him or someone else that was close in Diddy's circle at the time to have sexual contact with a member of the same sex of which he wasn't predisposed to, So all allegations. And again, how would they treat Diddy? If he was protected, like they say, I don't really abide by that opinion. I don't know what to think fully of Diddy. I'm just seeing these hallmarks here where there's like potential for him to be one of these figures. We're definitely going to see in terms of his treatment from here on out. Will he get arrested? If so, what happens from there? What's the sentencing? Is he going to die in prison under mysterious, like, is it going to be one of those weird things, or
Sure.
is it not? Because rappers have been doing it forever. People turn a blind eye. Like,
I mean, I'd say
personally,
musicians have been doing it forever.
yeah, true. Yeah, that's actually a better way to
even
put it.
like
Yeah, musicians in general,
just in general.
entertainment,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, low-hanging fruit is all I was going to finish off on. I think personally Epstein was known about before he went down in 2019. He'd been known about since even before 2007. The wider world was introduced to him in 2007. Harvey, open secret for so long. I personally believe that there's people that it's just time for their reign to end, so to speak, in the eyes of whomever has sort of the influence to make that happen. And, you bring down Diddy, you can say you're doing something about it. We don't stand for this type of behavior. And then a new crop comes in 10 years later, 15 years later, we deal with them.
Right.
Repeat.
Producer Mark informed me that it's Kid Cudi, not Meek Mill, who had his car blown up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I want to ask about Rachel Chandler.
Sure.
Because she has a connection to both Epstein and Diddy. Can you tell me about her?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rachel was one of the figures that, next to Elefantis, in the early days of Pizzagate.
Elefantis is the owner of Comet.
You got it. Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah, James Elefantis, kind of the main figure the theory revolves around, whether that should be the case or not. Rachel probably had what researchers at the time described as like the most unsettling imagery, second to Elefantis, just very strange stuff. It followed the same aesthetic, the same general type of style was employed in the imagery. There was occult imagery. There was lots of kids on there. Now, I try not to focus too much on the images, but with Rachel, she's the co-founder of something called Midland Modeling Agency. And what a lot of people don't know about her, it's pretty interesting. Her influence on fashion and, just the fashion industry as a whole, is huge. When you see this strange, unique type of style, for instance, employed by fashion houses like Balenciaga, that actually stems from Rachel Chandler and her partner, Walter Pierce, who co-founded Midland Modeling Agency together. Now, where the Epstein tie-in comes in, it's indirect, but it's one of those examples of okay, note that. There was an article, I think it might have been Vogue, right? Because she's an authority on the matter. She's a casting director. She does photography, very embedded within celebrity and elite culture to a certain degree. Her name now, Rachel Chandler Guinness, married into the Guinness family dynasty, a very wealthy bloodline. But she also comes from one too. Researchers concluded, she was a descendant of the LA media newspaper dynasty, the Chandler family.
Okay.
And it's interesting because what's really piqued people's curiosity back in 2016 was an image that surfaced of her arm in arm with former President Bill Clinton on what appeared to be a private plane at the age of 19. So she's been pictured with a lot of different people, but we failed to come up with any type of sort of context that would explain, okay, how does a 19-year-old get with a former president alone on a plane, right? And it's interesting because even Snopes has essentially conceded, hey, yeah, we actually don't know whose plane that is. Maybe it's Ron Burkle's, maybe it's Frank Gustra's. We're not entirely sure. And it doesn't really, contrary to what many people might believe, it's not debunked or whatever. There's some mystery around it. And that led people to look deeper into it. And they just found some very strange things around her. Another one was a friend of Elefantis's, at least on Instagram. He posted this image of men, 3 guys in masks, literally eyes wide shut masks. I forget the username, but anyway, 3 eyes wide shut type of mask. We couldn't identify the actual type of mask. And they're on their knees in quite literally ritualistic garb, right? It was quite, it was an interesting scene. There was a lot of flowers in the background. It was just as if they picked up a camera and said, we want to make something kind of look creepy, take a photo that looks creepy, occultish. That's exactly what it was. But the guy hashtagged these pictures, hashtag comment ping pong, hashtag Rachel Chandler. But it's she's not in the picture and has nothing to do with this, but you're tagging her.
Right.
So that's kind of the weird curiosity, so to speak. Nothing necessarily damning, but that's sort of the WTF, who is this chick? And
has she ever commented on anything?
No, she is actually one of the more quiet individuals. A lot of the people that unfortunately got got the brunt of threats and death threats and all that awful stuff. You know, they've commented on Facebook. They've made posts about how my friend is caught up in this, you know, baseless conspiracy theory, so on. So she's never said anything. I mean, as far as I know, there's just not a hint of anything at all. And naturally, when you have someone that's sort of at the center of this wider nexus of celebrities and stars and fashionistas, so to speak, that naturally, that's a testimony to sort of who these people roll with. She's not too much disconnected from Elefantis himself. So this entire group is like a who's who in the art world, in the world of politics. And on Rachel's side, she kind of brings in like the entertainment and fashion. So
and the girls.
Like right.
Well, if she runs like when you tell me she runs a modeling agency, I could see how a lot of powerful men would want to be friends with her, because then she can just show up with 20 chicks.
You got it. And let's remember that was Epstein's main source, right? He used Jean-Luc Brunel as the matchmaker through a modeling agency called MC Squared. Now check this. MC Squared was the agency that Rachel told Vogue to be on the lookout for, the next big thing. You know, I think it was called like top 17 models that are hot this year, according to Midland Models, Rachel Chandler. And there was like 5 of them that were MC Squared models for Epstein's agency. Epstein was still active at the time. Like, he wasn't arrested yet. Now, that's not proof that Rachel is in on it, right? Because I can suggest something and not know that they're up to no good. But again, of course, that little connecting line is there,
sure.
You know, and that's really what, you know, this Pizzagate stuff is about, is the constant appearance of the theme of inappropriate sexual activity with or regarding or involving kids, whether photographically depicted or hanging out with people that have confirmed to have done that stuff, such as Tony Podesta hanging out with Dennis Hastert. You know, these people, most of us wouldn't really associate with people that are known for that, you know,
right.
but they do. So with Rachel, that's the main curiosity with her, is that MC Square connection, in the sense of she suggested specifically those models. And I'd like to add another point of curiosity that researchers had about her was the, what do they call it, streetwear fashion, or street style. It's the idea of destroying beauty standards and using models essentially literally from the streets. So if you go to Midland Models, you'll notice that half of them, and I don't mean this in any offense to anybody, they look skinny, malnourished. A lot of researchers are like, are these people captives? Now, of course, that's outrageous, but the aesthetic, the vibe you get from the images, and that's what I'm talking about, this very specific type of imagery and aesthetic and style. It's dark. It depicts dark aspects of humanity. So my point is that it's interesting that she's not looking for done-up models. She's looking for people literally off the street. And
sure.
She says that in an interview. You know, one of her first models walked past the front of the cafe that she was eating in. She just started taking pictures of them, like, right away. You know, so I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, of course. I'm just saying, you know, so it's no coincidence that, and I can get to that a little bit later. I don't want to talk to you.
And they're still operating Midland Models. Like, I just looked it up. It appears.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's doing better than ever. In fact, you might recall the Balenciaga thing.
Yeah. Whatever came of that. Did anything come of that? I obviously remember.
No. There was some court issues. I forget exactly what was brought up. There was like people being sued for it, but as far as I know, there was really nothing that happened. Balenciaga bounced back. Everybody bounced back. It sort of became forgotten, you know. But the thing about that was it had the same exact hallmarks that people were pointing out with the pizza stuff. I mean, with the imagery in the background, you got to look at it. And of course, it's about kids. It's not about anything else. It's about that. You go to Lada Volkova. She wasn't a casting director. She was one of the former main stylists or something like that. On Instagram, she just posted a slew of just straight up satanic imagery. Okay. And look, when I say satanic, I'm not coming at this from a religious perspective, like the evangelical Marilyn Manson is bad perspective. I'm just saying that clearly they show an interest in the occult. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that seems to be the case. It's not one post, two post, three. It's several. She deleted a ton. One of the images was a little girl tied up in a chair and blindfolded. And of course they get away with this because, it's under the guise of art. But the issue is perhaps it just is art, right? That's what it comes down to. Maybe it just is art. Maybe they're not sickos at all. And that's that fine line that I try to toe, where I try to be fair to Rachel. I try to be fair to Eleventh. I try to be fair to these people. I was maybe a little bit more loose with the lips, like, in the early years, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Over time, you understand like the weight of your words, and you at least try to put some backing to it. This is why I think about this. This is why I'm asking this question, or even thought to ask about it to begin with. But Rachel, there's a reason her name came up with Balenciaga during that scandal. Balenciaga to all of us was separate at that time. Oh, wow, another, elite kind of weird pedo scandal happening. But you look into it, Rachel Chandler is the main casting director, great friends with Demna, V. Demna, right? So she crops up again even there, and that is like the epitome of Pizza Gate is like things popping up that relates to something very specific and awful. These child-related abuse crimes.
And these kind of elite, I guess, society people who they all obviously, when you're friends with the Clintons and whatnot, and then you work at the highest fashion houses and the top casting agencies, and you're just all just kind of intermingle.
And that's That's exactly right. A perfect example of that is like, I'd like to bring up the connection between Eleventh and actually, I should have mentioned this before, Marc Dutroux. That is a case that a lot of people don't know about it. That happened in Belgium in the mid 90s. He's known as like the Jeffrey Epstein of Belgium. He abducted girls and kept them in dungeons. He was vicious in the sense that like there was murders involved. But when he was arrested, he testified that he was like sort of like the child snatcher for the Belgian government, the extreme right wing in the Belgian government. Of course, this is bipartisan, though, I'd imagine, but that's just what was brought up. Now, this thing spiraled out of control because not only did half the government end up being implicated, I'm exaggerating, many in the government, the Belgian, they were implicated by these victims that just had the most awful things to say. They even rescued some of the girls from the dungeon after they arrested Dutroux. But anyway, this case almost ended up toppling the Belgian government. There was like 200,000 people in the streets. It's known as the White March. It was early 2000s, I want to say. They stormed out to the streets because of the court's mishandling of the case. He was able to escape, this, that. Check this out. One of the victims of Dutroux, there's something called the X files or the X dossier. Now, this is a dossier that was ignored by the media and by law enforcement. They looked at one set of data that kind of kept things in a fine little framework of like normal abusers. We'll go with this guy and we'll keep the elite stuff out of it. But you look at the X dossiers, I mean, that has some names in there that are just way up here. So it was kind of controlled in that sense. But if you look at the list of names that this victim, Regina something, I forget her name off the top of my head, there's a name of a guy named Axel Vervoort. She said that the abuse was going down next to his castle and that he was involved in it. She even specified that he was involved in like a separate thing other than Marc Dutroux. Axel Vervoort is like the biggest like architecture interior design guy. He's Kanye West or Ye's interior designer. And he's the favorite interior designer. And he's very close friends with Tony Podesta, James Alefantis, and Marina Abramovic. And it just, what are the chances of that? Like, to me, that just, it doesn't make me say, okay, that's it. It's all 100% real. What I read online is real. But that makes me stop for a moment and say, God damn it, like I'm trying to be fair here. Sure. But you throw that at me and it's like, I don't know what to think, out of the left field. That one was just, I'll never forget learning about that. It's just wild, man.
That's bizarre. All right, we're going to take a call. Phone lines are open, everybody. 1-888-949-2969, extension 1. You'll be put on hold and just chill on hold and we'll get to you. One moment, please. Let's grab the first call here. we have, I believe, my man Sean. You there?
Hey, Danny, it's Sean from Pittsburgh.
Sean from Pittsburgh. How's it going, man?
What's up, Sean?
Oh, it's going very well. Oh, everything's great, man.
Good. What's up?
All right, so I have a question here. So I'm referring to in 2018, the FBI, they closed a federally funded observatory called Sunspot, seemingly with no explanation. But then a few days later, they came out and said, nah, the janitor there, his name was Joshua Cope. He had a pretty dodgy laptop that apparently has some child pornography on it. I guess he went to trial. I don't really know what happened afterward, but
now, Sean, sorry. So I was just saying, an observatory, like an observatory, just like where you look at like the stars and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It was a federally funded observatory for.
And they just shut the whole thing down.
I guess
they're just like, we're closing this thing.
They shut it all down. That was for 11 days. They shut the whole thing down. There was really no explanation why. But then a few days later, it came out that there was a janitor there who had a laptop, and it was on the FBI's server, and he was involved in a child porn distribution ring.
Okay. Yeah, there's no justification or explanation there on that one. I remember that case.
Well, that's it. I wanted to ask, what do you think happened there? Was it actually a child pornography situation, or was there something that they saw at the observatory that they warranted, hey, we got to shut the whole fucking thing down?
Yeah, that does make me knowing. It's a great question, man. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm thinking that the CP story might have been covered, because I'll tell you what, witnesses in the area reported them sending like Black Hawk helicopters at one point, and witnesses also describe at the time using some type of detection or instruments on the grounds around the observatory. What they were allegedly scanning for, what they're allegedly looking for, we don't know. And that's like everything else like this story that we don't know about. We know very little other than they flew in with freaking military hardware, essentially. At least that's what locals say. They shut the entire place down, including the post office, I think, which I thought was pretty significant in a way, because that also means nothing is really coming like in or
where
out
was
or
this?
Leaving the area. I think it was New Mexico. It was actually just like 50 miles or something from Zorro Ranch, Epstein's Zorro Ranch. So a lot of people were thinking it was like statecraft espionage type of stuff. So there was some type of data being transmitted or obtained from the observatory at the time. This is all speculation, right? Because Black Hawk helicopters sent in for a lowly janitor and downloading bats, that doesn't vibe with me at all. Like, it doesn't make sense, really. So I get national security threat vibes from that. So, and at the time, let's recall, if I'm recalling correctly, they shut down multiple observatories around the world at the same time that was connected to the same network, if I recall correctly. You're gonna have to fact check me on that one, going by memory. But these were the findings that weren't really being covered by the news at the time. So there was a gap, between what we were able to uncover from witness testimony, locals, things like that, and what we were able to see in the media. There's a gap, and that gap never got filled in. It's crazy. I'm glad you remember that. Somebody remembers it. It's crazy. It's like just kind of disappeared,
Well, exactly. That's why I called, because that was the topic that got Memoryhold.
You got it, man. That's it. See you
later,
Sean.
boys.
Well, yeah, I've never heard of this one before. I'm just looking it up right now.
Yeah, really interesting, right?
Sunspot, New Mexico.
That's it.
Yeah, that
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but it's just like a janitor.
Right. And they were just saying that essentially his laptop was on their Wi-Fi.
Right. He was just
like what?
Their network.
It's like what? Okay, let me add a pertinent detail. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
This still doesn't make sense though, but supposedly the janitor did make threats. When he showed up to check in on his laptop, I guess he'd set it up and set things to download using their Wi-Fi. I don't know, maybe it was extra good. I guess he left the computer and someone found it and saw, gross stuff. This is their story, the official story. When he returns, his laptop is missing. Obviously, he's in panic. He's all razzed up, razzle dazzle. He's saying, shit, where's my incriminating, laptop? And he can't find it. So then he starts making threats to the establishment, saying, apparently there's a serial killer around these parts. You don't want to be, leave the door on, like weird things. But that still doesn't warrant a Black Hawk helicopter and like scanning instrumentation and stuff,
Right. And what happened to this guy, Joshua Cope? Do we know?
No, not that I know of. I remember, he was arrested. I think it went to trial, but after that, I don't really see too much about it, to be honest. That one sort of flickered away. There was a lot going on at that time, so I wouldn't be surprised if I sort of put that to the wayside. That was sort of parallel to those downtown Los Angeles drills where they sent in Blackhawks to these Wells Fargo areas at the same time as a Wells Fargo outage. Fun stuff, man. That was a fun year. You can call it that.
Yeah. I'm trying to find out what his sentence was here, but I cannot. It's a big Vice article, but it's long. All right, let's take another call. One moment, please. Conspiracy extremist, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up? How's it going, Danny?
Good. How are you?
What's up?
I'm great, man. Hey, yeah, I got a question in regards to the pizza stuff. And I gotta ask first because I know Slav is. I'm sure he's gonna call in and go hard on this subject, but. Did you notice any connection at all with maybe some foreign government in the Middle East that's our greatest ally?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was quite a bit there. But how do I explain it? That mostly comes in with Epstein, where you have the power and influence of certain Israeli lobbyists, right, connected to the military. We have that famous image of Epstein with Ehud Barak, for example, right? A very big boy, over there. So they pop up, quite frequently around there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We have the Bronfmans too. We have Bronfman money coming in with Nexium. That was the other thing I should have brought up, was the unprecedented rapid fire takedown of like 5 different trafficking outfits of like celebrities, right? Nexium with Alison Mack, Harvey Weinstein, John of God, these people that are all connected to one another. But throughout those connections, you definitely get all sorts of connections, and connections back to Israel is one of them. But that mostly comes up with, with the Epstein stuff. And Whitney Webb talks a lot about that objectively. She does good work.
Yeah, so it is every single time, I guess, huh? Wow.
Well, I don't want to go crazy here, but, I think if you try hard enough, you'll see the same group of people if you try hard enough. And sometimes the other thing is too, the upper management, so to speak, is very incestuous. So you're gonna see
once you're in
here,
it seems like you're in.
Yeah, there's a lot of, these people are connected to and that's the other thing we have to be careful of with the pizza stuff too, because of course, a lot of these people will be connected to each other. So you do have to be careful about that. But yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got the, I wish I can remember the name, the World Jewish Congress or something like that. I think, Robert Maxwell and like his camp was sort of involved in like the early formation of that. But interesting connections though, for sure. Something we can't ignore, unfortunately.
Were there a lot of on the Pizzagate, like the Podesta emails and whatnot? Like, were there a lot of?
Well, not, there could have been, but I gotta be honest with you, like I didn't really see as strong as an influence directly I guess I wasn't looking for Israeli state involvement specifically. People throw around these accusations about, the shills and the bots that are coming at us, when we're doing this, calling them Israeli shills, calling them this. Okay, they could be because, they've got the IDF, or they used to, and we all have the same thing. But with the pizza stuff, I don't remember the sort of like the Israeli infiltration, as they would call it, being like the main focal point of conversation. It always came in with the contextual background cases that sort of sound similar or had similar hallmarks to pizza. At least that's how I came across that stuff. At the time, though, when all this was happening for the first time, I wasn't even familiar with what people were saying about certain groups of people. You know what I mean? That's the other thing. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff I didn't learn right away, have yet to still learn, and have yet to change my mind on, too. So,
sure. Anything else there?
Yeah, I got
real
quick. Are you familiar with the Sound of Freedom dude?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am vaguely familiar with him. I know there was some controversy around him, child-related controversy, but I don't recall. I remember people saying, it was a pretty slam dunk case type of thing, whatever. But then there was some switch up there where people started to doubt the legitimacy of the case. Could be way off on that. That's not one that I followed super close. The Jim Caviezel movie, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you knew anything because I heard some controversy too, but
yeah,
right.
that was asking for it.
Yeah, wasn't it like the guy who ran it or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was like the guy that bankrolled a lot of it, like one of the main dudes behind it, where as far as I know, it's like the movie wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for him. So, for people that are against the type of rhetoric in the film, lambasting it for, being Q adjacent, sort of these pesky similarity, whatever, that's just an easy free shot to land right there, as if that guy ended up legitimately possessing whatever it was that he was said to possess. There's a no-brainer for them to go all out on the guy if that's the case. But truthfully, didn't get too deep in that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Danny, I'll leave you with this. I heard you, I think you were on the bathhouse talking about, they were asking you if you cry. Men don't cry, so don't listen to those guys. That's propaganda. My kid was just born exactly a week. My fourth kid was born just exactly a week ago. I didn't shed a single tear. So don't
congrats,
listen to those
guys. Congrats on the kid, and congrats on not crying, man.
All right, thanks, man.
See you, man.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's take another call here. Just give me a sec. I believe we have Dylan. Dylan, are you there?
Yo.
Dylan, what's up? You're on
What's up,
fellas?
What's going on, Dylan?
Hey, I just had a quick question related to Epstein. I was wondering if you are familiar with a fella by the name of John Mark Dugan.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're breaking up there for a moment.
John Mark Dugan.
John Mark Dugan. That is a name. Yep. John Mark Dugan. Was that he wasn't Trudeau's buddy, was he? I know the name. I actually don't recall. What was his deal? You pull that up.
Marine Corps veteran.
He was the ex-Palm Beach sheriff.
Oh.
That reportedly stumbled upon a bunch of videos from Epstein's various residences because he knew the Florida lead investigator.
Oh, but, that's right.
After the FBI raided his house, he fled to Russia.
Interesting.
He fled to Russia?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he fled to Russia.
And he still lives there to this day?
Yes. Yes.
Why did he... What were the, I can't imagine he said he fled to Russia over this. What is the reason that he says he fled to Russia?
It was for this. It was after the FBI raided his home and took his computer. And it was just basically
he knew about all this stuff and he was just complicit in it? Is that essentially the...
No, he got the videos from the lead investigator out of Florida. There was a Florida investigator by the name of Joseph Recarey, and he was investigating Epstein in Florida.
Yeah,
and Dugan got the videos from him.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And they would have been very embarrassing to the Florida PD or Palm Beach PD at the time or whatever. So there'd probably be significant interest in shutting this guy down just based on who he was dealing with, because they're looking at years of Epstein operating there unbothered, so to speak, for the most part, right? I mean, and even that we're hazy on. We don't know how long he was legitimately active for doing this horrible stuff. We have a general time frame that we can probably safely say, but the 90s even get hazy. But yeah, John Mark Dugan, he 2016 is when he fled to Russia, and that's interesting if you think about the timing, because 2016 was right around the time that the Epstein case was really coming into full view. I imagine that's when the pants shitting started to begin there with Epstein. At least it was becoming real to him. But apparently they were looking into Mark Dugan as a hacker. It was like a hacking investigation. And I'm just reading off of this wiki here just for the listeners' context. That's a good question. I mean, he was a former Marine.
I'm sorry. He used to go by the name Bad Wolf, which is like kind of Russian sound, like Bad Wolf.
I mean, Dugan could be a Russian last name. I'm just wondering why Russia, just because they're just the enemies of like a similar thing with Snowden.
I think he's only like the third or fourth American to get asylum in Russia. And I just want to say one more thing, and then I can jump off. But Dugan was actually like feared by MI6 about Prince Andrew too. Like he was MI6 came out and said like, yo, we actually are scared of whatever footage or whatever information this guy might have on Prince Andrew. So he's just a really interesting guy that's like hardly ever talked about. And it's like everyone always talks about lists and flight logs, but there's like alleged video evidence out there. And I know it probably sucks to look through or like watch, but like that's the evidence. Right. Those are the guilty parties on the video, you know? We're not
of course.
Looking at lists and flight logs. I can fake those all day. I can put you on my guest that you don't show up.
Right. You know, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Epstein case was sort of like a walled garden. It's incredible how, I hate to use the word tidy, they made it. They made this nice and tidy case with these victims, and it was only these victims where, you know, if you didn't know any better, you would look at this as just a normal old man that had a lot of money, and these were his victims. I'm not going to look any deeper into it, but if you don't, you miss out on people like this guy. You miss out on his testimony, what he had to do in terms of releasing whistleblowing type information. Very embarrassing for the police department. Created a whistleblowing website at one point, or at least exposing police corruption and misconduct online. But the point is, there is hundreds of victims. Jean-Luc Brunel used to scout for girls in South America. There used to be pages on MC Squared's website. I did a video on this a while ago where we went through the deleted website live on stream, and it's the craziest shit. It's surreal to look at, knowing what it actually is, right? And what it's masquerading as, unfortunately. But the point is that this is a prime example, as you said, of like, okay, you can look at the flight logs all you want. That gives you, you know, very crucial information, but there are videos out there. There are hard data points, hard pieces of evidence, such as the blackmail tapes, that are still out there somewhere, most likely confiscated by one agency or another, at least partially. But there's so many women that haven't gone forward. If you read the prosecutor's book, Bradley Edwards, that book is crazy, because like the lead up to the trial wasn't that boring. Epstein dispatched people to stalk this guy, to harass his victims, to break into their homes. This is all stuff we didn't hear about in the trial. He's vicious. I always thought the mysterious absence of physical violence was telling. Because I'm sorry, but where do you draw the line? Hey, I'll destroy children sexually, but I draw the line at, you know what I mean? Come on now. Like, possibly, but the absence of all of that is strange to me. And then we hear these murmurs through people like Mark Dugan, or more specifically, Bradley Edwards, and these other testimony where we have like former soldiers working for Epstein planting GPS devices on his car, on the prosecutor's car. Like, crazy stuff that we'll never hear about, especially since Brunel's dead now. As soon as Brunel committed suicide in prison, just like Epstein, I knew right then and there, I said, you know, that side of the story, which is the massive, vast size, is probably never going to come to the surface, at least in any mainstream way. I was surprised they even mentioned the prospect of blackmail. You know, I'm glad they did, but
yeah,
huge case.
One more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good.
One more thing. Danny?
Yes, sir.
I love your show, buddy.
Thanks, man.
You're the man.
Appreciate it.
Memoryhold? You got a new fan, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for calling in, man.
Thanks, Doc.
Hell yeah.
Later.
Nice. See ya.
I just actually looked up. So on Amazon, there's a book written by Mark Dugan. So he basically wrote a book of his entire account and it's all obviously from his side of the story. So who knows how much of it is true, but it's essentially like he was this whistleblower and then he tricked all these police and all this stuff. And then he escaped to Russia and he was pretending to be a Russian hacker and all this shit.
That's crazy. I've seen here he waged like a campaign against his former employer using legal tools as well as trickery like voice modification to obtain compromising recordings on officials. That's crazy.
So, the way he makes it out is that I think he wanted to be like, hey, there's all this bad shit going on, and they were just ignoring him. So,
yep, and that seems to be the case. Palm Beach ignoring, Epstein for many years, I mean, shit, there's an infestation at the Pentagon, man. Operation Flicker. You can, listeners can look that one up. I think there was like a few thousand DOD Pentagon personnel that were, had IP addresses affiliated with the transmission of no content. That's crazy. That's a mainstream one too. It was when
2000. Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That's nuts. All right, let's take another call. One moment, please. We got Tanner. Let's see if we can get Tanner here. I don't believe I've ever spoken to Tanner. Tanner, how's it going, man? You're on the show.
What's up, Tanner?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Super interesting. I remember whenever all this stuff dropped after the WikiLeaks and kind of looking at some of the files in there. And one character, I don't know if you guys have brought him up yet, but John Podesta.
Yeah, definitely.
And I remember seeing photos of him with these girls in like an SUV, and they had these weird like sigil like cutouts on their foreheads, and they were in some like evergreen forest.
Yeah, I remember that photo again. You're right. That is part of a batch of photos that I do not see to this day. There was a few photos, and that came in the form, if I recall, of an email attachment, maybe. I think that might have been one of the email attachments. And there are a few other email attachments that, weren't necessarily crazy damning, but were just sort of like out of context. You know what I mean? It had no like body or text. There was one with an office filled of kids, running around. It could have been his relatives, for God's sake. But there was that attachment that for one reason or another never really got brought up in Pizzagate for despite the content matter, being ripe for them to sort of leap on. But there was also, what was it? Another one of like just some baby that was all dressed up, basically like a Walmart family photo. And there's like a custom made happy birthday, John sign, I guess, all these harmless images. But yeah, lots of stuff we don't, that even I've forgotten about, going back and reconstructing the theory. I see all this, it's funny you mentioned that because I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things like that really, because I remember when it first came out and there was a lot of contention, like this is a conspiracy, this is a psyop, yada, yada. But I just remember thinking this is so bad that it's probably real. And
yeah, that's what I remember thinking. Yeah.
It was just sick to my stomach, And so there was also these initial footage from Ping Pong Pizza. And I was just convinced at that point, like, oh God, this is bad.
Yeah, there was a lot right off the bat. Sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're good. You're good. And Clayton coming out of a bookstore with like weird signs, and I don't know what was real and what wasn't, but it was just all at once. It was like, oh my God, this stuff is overwhelming. So
that's what it was. It was all at once. It was like a flood of like really questionable information that, by the way, followed sort of more mundane information, like the leaking of the debate questions to Hillary. That was legitimate. Donna Brazile faced consequences for that. And only then do we find these weird emails where we're like, what it, and dude, it was that at that point forward, the race was on. We essentially took like an intravenous drip of like the most horrendous stuff that you can imagine, not necessarily just from these people, but just seeing the sheer amount of them that are all friends or within the same social network posting these really, really awful, like, I can't imagine posting them as an adult, and I've got the darkest humor, the darker the better as far as I'm concerned, but there's some stuff there. I'm willing to say, okay, I get what they're going for, poor taste, but I get it. I'm willing to give them that leeway, but at some point, there is some stuff that even really, truly unsettled me, especially when you look at it holistically. And that's the key with the Pizzagate stuff. You're not going to find smoking gun evidence. That's a false expectation. You need to, like you're basically saying, we got all this stuff very fast. We were looking at it from like the top down, because I assume you were there when it first started or very early on. So that's the situation for me too. Taking all that in, seeing just the sheer amount of people posting this stuff that's cryptic. I don't want to say coded, but possibly coded. And the theme staying the same across the board, whether it's Tamara Lozado from the Pew Charitable Trust, friends with Podesta, very powerful, saying, I've got pictures of my kid raw and uncut, with like nude images of him on a blog.
Yeah.
Or whether it's like, if it's not one thing, it's the other. And that was the same woman in the heated pools email, we'll be Uber servicing Maeve, Ruby, and Emerson. And she puts their ages in parentheses just to make absolute sure, so you'll have further entertainment because they'll be in that pool for sure. So you could look at that email and be like, yeah, I can see why maybe it's sketchy. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, who sent that email? Okay, Tamara Lozado. Let me look her up. You look her up, and then you find that shit, the raw and uncut, come hang out with my kid for an hour on. It's like, God damn, dude, it's like I gave you the benefit of the doubt by saying maybe that email isn't crazy. And yet I found something crazy anyway, or not readily explainable.
Yeah. I also just wanted to quickly comment on what you said about the fashion of Chandler. Like, that's madness that she's still around and they're pulling this shit off. And, like, I grew up listening to Manson and Pantera, Slipknot, all these, heavy metal guys. Like, I get it.
Oh, yeah.
I like art. I love all this stuff. But the passage that it gives them that you spoke of earlier, that's so dark, man. That's messed up.
It's
but it makes
so
sense
dark
because they can hide it under all this shit. And it's just like the trend. It's like, yeah, these people are demons.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's funny. I wanted to, it's a good point you brought up though, man, because I come from heavy metal, death metal as well, the stuff with the darkest lyrics that you can ever imagine, right? But the interesting thing is, you look at their imagery, right? They share a lot of the same themes, right? A lot of death metal is satanic, lots of occult imagery, lots of inverted crosses, goats, whatever, dude. Cool stuff, badass stuff, right? But when they're used, you can tell the way they're used, right? When I look at some of Rachel's imagery, and if I look at some of the other imagery associated with these people that posted what researchers deem to be occult in nature, that doesn't look like I don't want to say contrived, but album art of death metal, when they use these occult symbols, it's usually performative, if that makes sense, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's to a bunch of sweaty biker gangs, like it's a bunch of white dudes. It's not kids. And kids aren't the center of the content. It's like,
And every type of occult imagery that was found, it was typically shared by a person that would also share some very inappropriate imagery related to kids, or at least imagery that would make most people say, what in God's name made them post that or caption it that? Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I just don't understand it. So when they use that imagery, it's in a different way. It's almost as if like these people are truly practitioners to some degree or another, or have an above average knowledge on some occult tradition of one sort or another. It took me so long to even understand the type of symbolism they're purportedly using, but it appears nonstop. I was surprised to see it. It was all nonsense to me until I looked at it.
Yeah.
Everything is the inverse of nature, and it's the inverse of beauty. It's subverting everything. And it's like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's hitting a boiling point at this point.
We're in the reflective pool of DC, as above, so below. You know what I'm saying? We really are inverted. At least it feels like that to me personally. I think we're moving further away from nature and further into this like synthetic construction that's kind of being cobbled together around us with our data that we've given them willingly for many years now. And I think that's how they got behavioral control to a certain degree over us.
Anything else, our caller?
No, thank you very much.
Cool.
And,
thanks, Tanner.
you scrotes, have a good night.
Thanks.
See you, man.
Appreciate it, man. I was thinking about, I was thinking actually about, because with the Fauci thing that just came out, and they were using all these code words to evade FOIA requests.
Right.
because essentially like, and they were like, basically they were spelling all these things in these different ways. Like, I'm curious if there was something going on with these where, because I assume that all these emails would have been under that scrutiny potentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because, we spoke about Diddy earlier. I'll throw in that Diddy sort of used a type of code system, more like a signal, just while we're on the topic of that. But he would send in, every time he was in town, I forget what town, but like he would be there normally, there would be this like a strip club, I guess, right? And every time he was in town, he would send someone out to say, tell the girls, hey, Diddy's in town, time to go back to my place for the freak offs or whatever. He would send somebody in with a certain type of hat, and it was a certain type of color. The guy didn't say anything. He just sat there, and they knew because of his attire to go over to Diddy's house, right? So these are employed in multiple ways. I also remember the registered agent, the company that has something to do with Rachel Chandler's Midland Models. It's interesting. Like you go to their website, I forget what it's called, but they had what's called a pig pen cipher at the bottom of their page, which is like a standard cipher typically used by or historically used by Freemasons and things like that. But very strange, out of left field. You see these things. Okay, emails, maybe they're coded, maybe they're not. Okay, let me click over here for a moment. A pig pen cipher. Totally normal. It's like, that's what throws me for a loop. It's
Right. Yeah.
Write one thing off.
There's some shady shit going on. Yeah. Let's take another call here.
Yep.
Shout out to Vince, Logan, and Eric for gifting some channel memberships. You guys are true scroats. Goop.
What's up, Danny?
How's it going?
What's up, man?
Pretty good, man. So, Pizzagate's cool and all, but how about Wayfair-gate, man? I think that one's even crazier.
Oh, yeah. So Wayfair, I remember. Now, there are some interesting things about Wayfair, but that is not one that I actually ascribe to. I think for some reason, it's not that it's impossible to make. It's just that what I was seeing when they were saying that, these missing kids were being sold as, pieces of furniture, cabinets. Now, that probably matches there's some historical precedent there. Okay. They did something similar on Facebook with labor trafficking, I believe. So it's not like it's unprecedented, right? I didn't buy into it. My first thought was like, it's almost as if someone spun up something that used all the hallmarks of pizza related stuff, right? These coded selling pages or whatever, put it at 60,000 for a fucking pillow, and that really means that it's a kid. And I felt like at the time I was nervous. I said, are they trying to like bait us into something, which I know is sort of like conspiratorial thinking inherently, but these are the things that happen. They really do. I've been around long enough to see things that I can't think any other way. I do think these people are busy bees trying to make people look bad on both sides of the aisle. That's what I assumed. But to this day, man, I'm not ready to fully say, okay, that's complete bullshit. I feel like I lost the luxury of saying anything is completely bullshit now.
Sure.
In the past.
Yeah, the Wayfair thing, and Goob, I don't know if you know about this with the Wayfair thing, but can you sell on Wayfair? Like, does Wayfair sell stuff on their site that's not fulfilled?
Like, can anyone make a listing?
Like, because I remember when the Wayfair thing happened, and then they were like, they're selling kids, and then all of a sudden, there was just like all these posts, and I was starting, like, my feeling at the time was there was just like probably like some 4chan trolls or something, or some sort of trolls, where they're like, we're gonna now make all these posts because we can like, just like Amazon, you can just like put a post up and then be like, see, look, they're selling them, but they were actually kind of just throwing fuel on the fire. I don't know that, but I remember at the time that was kind of what I was thinking.
No, that's a good thought, and there was a lot of that, but not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning, not the original post. Yeah.
Yep, there was like a good deal found at the beginning, and I'm sure a bunch of goofballs got to spreading a bunch of genuine misinformation from there. But I can't lie to you, man. Like that was pretty curious. That's not something that I would completely lay to bed, regardless of how outrageous it sounds on its face. Like I said, lots of outrageous things have happened, in the past couple of years. So,
yeah.
I mean, the craziest part of the Wayfair-gate thing to me was that there were real pages. I saw them. I know probably tens of thousands of other people saw them. They were very, very strange. They really did seem to be indicating some nefarious thing going on with children.
Yep.
And it was totally forgotten about probably within like 72 hours.
It went fast, and the media hit hard against it.
Well, they all just got removed.
There was really no, like, it just disappeared.
Yeah. I honestly, it seemed so far fetched, but I don't remember if like Wayfair even made any, because Wayfair is like a public company, so there was no comment. I don't even think really made on their part.
I don't believe there was. So I will say he is right though, like, because I was typically on 4chan when these things happen, not because I condone their activity. It's the garbage can of the internet. It's hysterical at points. It's also awful at sometimes as well, but they do good research. They're good diggers, right? Because they do it for free, and you can't beat that. So on there, the best way that we were determining what pages were real and what weren't, like, we were archiving them so we can ensure that they weren't manipulated, right? And that way we had the timestamp. Okay, this archive was taken before Wayfair was even really became a thing, right? Before it became a conspiracy theory. So backing up your statement, there was a lot of these pages. They seemed to be coded in some way because the errors on them, if you want to chalk it up to basic errors, okay, do that. But the error was the same across each of these posts. It was the price, and the name of the product seemed to match somebody that was
clear
missing.
Yeah,
right,
well,
exactly.
so I just
Googled.
I just from a quick search, there's from the initial post there was the $10,000 pillow and the Duplessis Zodiac, and then they interviewed the girl who was purported to be missing, and she's like, that was her. She's like, that was when I went missing, like previously, and my parent or whatever, and they had a whole. Now again, who knows? But they had some whole. But it does say there are like updates on it, I guess, but not from. They're all from just like Washington Post and shit.
Right.
They're just
So
like, it's a QAnon thing,
question.
and that's it.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go
ahead. Did Sandusky do anything wrong?
Shit. As far as I know, I mean, the guy was a creep, but that is a story that I'd have to revisit. It's been quite a long time. The last time I read into that story significantly was back probably when this all started in 2016. So I probably wouldn't be the authority on the Sandusky case.
We had the authority. We had the authority on.
We all know he's innocent.
Being innocent.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Is that the case?
Well, there's this guy, John Ziegler, who is he used to be like a radio show host, and I think he has like an Emmy or some sort of journalism award or something. But this guy has no attachment to him at all. At all. He's not like, didn't go to Penn State, doesn't know him, and he saw it and he goes, this is bullshit. The whole thing is ruined this guy's fucking life. Like, you can tell that this guy just could not give this up. And his whole thing is, he's like, Jerry Sandusky is completely innocent, was completely railroaded. It was all about getting Joe Paterno kicked out of Penn State because he was such a legend that they just couldn't get rid of him. And like, but they were losing and all this stuff. Anyways, it's a crazy story, but
crazy.
He's like the only person I've ever heard of who's like staunchly like, he did nothing wrong.
You know, I'm gonna. Who was that? John Ziegler? You said
his name's John Ziegler. Yeah, his name.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, it's great. He did a whole documentary with like Franco Harris, and Franco Harris is like he's innocent. Like Sandusky didn't do anything, and
interesting. Yeah, it's strange. Wild. It's like, I'll know a good amount of these cases, you know, but I feel like I only have the cognitive bandwidth to memorize so much at a time, you know.
Well, this is such a crazy one because it was such a big story, and he's just sitting in jail, and he's to this day never admitted any kind of guilt. He's never said he did anything. He's like,
interesting.
That is a wild one. It seems like one of those like untouchable conspiracies. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, I remember Penn State coming up at a time in the beginning, you know, this research, but I don't recall the association being incredibly damning. You know, with big organizations like that.
Well, at the time there was no counter argument. They were just like, yeah, he's guilty, and it was like it was like an incredibly quick trial, like unusually quick. Like there was just all these things about it that kind of just, I guess, were odd. Let's take another call. One moment, please.
Yeah, man.
I believe we have John joining us. John, are you there?
Hey, what's up, guys? John from South Carolina.
John from South Carolina. What's up?
I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? How do you think this plays out on the international stage, and how do other governments see this happening? Like, what does Russia and China think, and do their intelligence agencies have information, and should we go to them for this information, or just like a global thing? You know.
I'm going to be honest with you. Like, my belief is that it's a global thing. I think there's a reason, and this shines through, in my personal opinion, just to be clear about that. And this shines through in things that I would say, for example, the Cold War. Let's look at that. Everyone was fearful that everyone would be vaporized with nukes. I personally believe that there's a reason that there has been no mishap, despite the, I don't want to say availability, because that's certainly not the case back then, but I think there's a reason that like major global catastrophe has not happened. I think there's more collusion and cooperation among these global groups, even from China and Russia, countries that are not only our adversary nations, but very different culturally, right? It's the West and the East. And, you know, there's massive differences, but there's still similarities. And there's also Western shenanigans and riffraff at a lot of the origin points. Like, a lot of Western interests were involved in the erection of like the modern Chinese leadership. Like, I think there you can look at Kissinger on that one. Like, there's a lot about Chinese society that has sort of been at like years ago, and maybe still today. I'm hazy on this, but you can verify this 100%. You know, there's power going back and forth from these groups that sort of transcend government in some cases. Right now, Kissinger was affiliated with the US government, but you can also look at big tech as well. You can look at Google assisting in the creation of China's sort of system, which is very firewalled off. It's like their own system. It's their own walled garden. So it's creepy that the biggest tech company that consumes, you know, all of our data here, it's Google. Everyone's using Google, right? That's the same company that, depending on the circumstances, are not strangers to doing things for China, possibly for Russia over the years. Now, that's not the best example, though. The best example to like international cooperation, where I think every country has a degree of this going on, because it's a control system, in my opinion. And I think you look at NGOs and think tanks. You could take the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, most famously. They've been the most forward-facing one. You can look at those groups, especially the World Economic Forum, as sort of like public-facing mouthpieces of the wider agenda that is rolling out across the globe, right? And I'm not going to say it's done by evil villains with cats on their laps and, you know, I'm saying it's controlled and rolled out by a group of people that have a vision for the future that I don't personally agree with, right? It's highly technological, it's technocratic, and the people behind it are mostly transhumanists to a degree. They want to further this idea of further removing man from nature, so we can have sort of like this full spectrum control over the environment around us, as well as man himself, right? There's pandemics out there we got to stop. There's these existential threats. Now, that's the big key thing here: climate change. And, you know, these existential global threats that, okay, so what if the United States suddenly lowers emissions? You got India and China still doing it, right? These are things that threaten the planet, and why we're increasingly being collectivized, right? Where conformity is rewarded a little bit more often, and nationalism, for example, is being punished, right? Nationalistic sentiment, the Trumps of the world, they got to be crushed, snuffed out, peeled off the face of the earth, because that is sort of the main resisting force to this global society they're trying to build and keep control of. And personally, I think these Epsteins, okay, these types of people, I think they keep people in line, man. I think they keep people in line. And I don't want to say how exactly it appears in China and Russia, but I will say that, like, you might be surprised at the level of like interaction behind the scenes between these non-governmental groups and like Chinese interests, you know, rubbing each other's backs. So I hope that there's a roundabout way of answering the question. I hope I answered it. I think it is global. I think there's a larger play here going on, and much more is at stake, which is why people like Epstein are allowed to flourish.
Is there a Chinese Epstein Island, or do they all flow through Israeli Mossad agents? And what I'm curious is, when we talk about they at the top of the pyramid, where does China stand on that? And Because that's really an enigma. Russia's confusing too. So
Right.
is Turkey, but what do you think about China?
Yeah, so I'm thinking with China, they've got a top-down society. Like when you're not in a democratic governance or system of governance, you can do things a lot faster on a lot larger scale because there's nobody resisting you. There's the old stories of like the organ harvesting, right? Bringing Chinese prisoners out onto the tarmac so some rich guy can have a kidney. These things they can do like just out in the open, maybe not out in the open, but comparatively compared to what's going on here, that's pretty out in the open, right? There's things that the Chinese are able to do without the same degree of concern that Westerners and Americans like Epstein would have. So I don't know, Israeli Mossad's involvement, with China and all of that. They seem more interested in just Western endeavors, like in terms of like the Epstein creepy stuff. But in terms of China, that's personally what I think about China. They probably do have their own Epstein Island. I mean, it might even be, but all we know is that it would be state sanctioned. They would
they would know about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, they probably, like, if you're saying, are they trafficking children in China? Guaranteed, like
100%.
Are we operating with the assumption here that the American government knew about Epstein Island? And just because Chinese government knows about Epstein Island, like if America's run by the CIA and the CIA is run by these guys, then it's not exactly to say the state runs China. Like it's like saying the state runs the USA. Whoever runs the CIA runs the USA, probably, or whatever you want to think. But probably with China. So, are there any Chinese activists trying to put this stuff out, or is it just dead air?
I mean, I'm sure there are. But I'm sure there's someone who's like, I don't know about it. Like, I'm sure they're activists against, trafficking or whatever, and then just falls on deaf. I mean, you're not, the right to protest in China is pretty limited.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a good look for people protest something like this, especially if they're correct and accurate or remotely close.
Oh, if you're definitely, if you're definitely close, then it's because the thing is like they wouldn't allow you to protest something that would just, even if it was like just, that would make the government look bad.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you were like, hey, I figured out this whole thing, and they're like, well, this makes us look bad, so shut up.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And with Russia, you also have a lot of like the how do I explain it? Russia is one of the biggest offenders with pedophilia, especially on social media. I saw that when I was working on my documentary, Source Code Demons, a couple of years ago. So obviously that's not the whole country of Russia, but it's just one of those things where then you have got the Hunter Biden nexus there, where you've got their connections to Ukraine. And then there's that report. I forget what report it was from. I'll get the link. I can send it over to you because it's readily available. It's on the .gov website. It's like a Senate report of one sort or another on Hunter Biden, and a footnote at the very bottom outlined and highlighted his connections to like verified Russian mob, Eastern European mob that dabbles in trafficking, right? And we know from his leaked text messages that, he was very much involved with ordering women, so to speak, right? The information we know is above aged adult women, right? And it just high-end escort stuff. But a lot of them were from this region is all I'm saying. And I think there's also, when MC Squared dissolved, what people don't really think about, they dissolved and sold their assets to these different modeling agencies. Identity Models is one of them. That's a New York City agency that also has worked with Rachel's Midland. And out of nowhere, there's one mother agency that they sold and they're in Ukraine, which I thought was interesting. And they also had a branch, MC Squared also had a branch in Tel Aviv. But so like you do see like Russia, Ukraine, and like that region of the world pop up. But to be honest with you, a lot of this stuff, at least my personal focus, was very much American centric, despite knowing that this was a global issue. Like I'll touch on Dutroux.
I mean, I don't think there's
Belgian.
Yeah, I don't think there's any country where the shit's not happening.
Absolutely.
I don't think you could find a single country in the world where they're not doing this shit.
Absolutely. It's lucrative. That's what we have to remember.
And there's people who want to do it, and it's lucrative, and it's just something.
It's awful.
Awful thing that people do. All right, anything else, caller?
Nope. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's take some more calls here. We got a bunch in the queue here.
Hell yeah.
Thanks again for coming on.
Dude, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
we got Slav. How you doing, man?
What's up?
Y'all hear
Slav,
me?
yeah.
Yep.
I saw in the chat you were eating the fucking most Russian shit in the world. Dark rye with smoked fish.
Yeah, I'm back on the weed. And,
Oh, you smoke weed, and that's what you're you get a little taste for some cured fish.
I mean, I'm not out there eating fucking junk food.
That's good.
Fuck, no fast food over here now. It's all the natural stuff.
Good.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, you're great on war mode, man.
Yo, thank you.
I just want to start off. Yeah, I just wanted to start off with a little lighthearted question before I get into as Billy and Spud call it, pizza hook. So you know, yeah. So you know how like they like to humanize all these like world leaders, even though they're like demons.
Yeah.
What do you think their preferences on pizza are? One, do you think all these elites are they delivery people or frozen pizza people? I mean, Obama's he's from Chicago. You think he can he argues with people about saying deep? I don't. It's lasagna, bro. It's lazy lasagna.
It is. I agree. It's a casserole. It's literally a fucking casserole.
No, I gotta say, thinking delivery, maybe delivery.
Yeah,
you know, they
definitely
used to
delivery.
say there's some journalist that cracked this code many years ago where he was able to tell that major geopolitical incidents were about to break the news because the rate of pizza deliveries to the Capitol building would increase dramatically before major news stories.
Because they were like
break.
pulling all-nighters and stuff. Like
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess they're delivery.
I mean, I'm always 50-50 on that because I know within the actual Pentagon, they have like an entire shopping mall underground, and they have like several food places. Like
it's probably not
Subway,
24 hours though.
but-
I bet you it has like it's like an airport where like at some point they're not 24 hours.
Yeah,
they probably close, right? But if you're kind of working overnight because you got some national security crisis, then you got to ship the pizzas in.
Yeah, gotta ship them in. Yeah. Deep underground military bases.
I don't know if I saw this. I don't know if this is true, but I saw someone posted that the U.S. government has mobile Burger Kings that they can like deploy to any theater, and within 24 hours have like a fully operating Burger King set up.
Oh, that's gnarly! I never knew that.
Yeah, I mean they even showed it on Modern Marvels. Like when they started the whole invasion of Iraq, all of the History Channel just started pushing out like, look what the military can do. It's like, yeah,
we got Burger Kings.
It's pretty cool.
I wonder if any of those got left in Afghanistan. Mobile Burger Kings.
Yeah, the biggest threat right there.
They weren't shipping in bacon, that's for sure.
No.
Oh shit. That's true. That's true.
And I'll just mention this once y'all talking about like all these people who want to get arrested in America but they live in Russia. If you guys ever get a free chance, look up this guy named Chad Howard. He's called like the Tik Tok Fugitive. He's a guy that's wanted by the FBI for like involvement in kidnapping. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No,
But
Chad Howard, Riley recognized as a Tik Tok fugitive, has faced myriad challenges since his FBI indictment for allegedly kidnapping his now 27-year-old son. I don't know. Whenever I hear this shit and it's a guy and they said he kidnapped his kid, it's always just like he just wanted to see his kid and his ex-wife wouldn't let him. It's like almost like 99% of every Amber Alert is just literally some dad who's like, I just want to see my kid, so I picked them up from school on a day that like I wasn't allowed to.
Right. Yeah. All those like that's typically like the stats you hear thrown around with the pizza related stuff is like the number of missing kids per year, but that's a vastly overinflated number. I mean, it's probably still too high, but a lot of those they get filed as missing kids, but they're not necessarily resolved in the case files or whatever in the searches when they return. So a lot of those are chalked up. I don't want to say it's 90%, but it might be like it was
from what I read quickly with the Wayfair thing, like the initial girl Duplessis or whatever, that's exactly what happened. She was filed as missing because she got lost or something, and they just never switched it.
Yep, that's exactly right. So it's definitely like one key thing to remember on that. You know, you asked earlier about certain pieces of falsehoods, you know, spread around, and that's typically one used to bolster, you know, the Pizzagate stuff, but it's not really the best stat to use for that.
Yeah. So why'd you bring up this the Chad Howard guy though?
Y'all just I forgot y'all mentioned somebody earlier, but no, like I just primarily y'all mentioned somebody else like running off to Russia, like what, like Snowden's obviously he's stuck in Russia. I mean, I think he feels safe there, so I don't know if he's like he considers himself stuck there. I mean, I don't think
it's his first choice. Back. I don't think it's his first choice of places to be. I think he's like, you know, it's not the worst place to have to go to live in Moscow or something, but definitely not. I mean, it sounds like Trump might pardon him.
He doesn't. I mean,
but also Trump could have pardoned him the first time.
It's true.
Yeah, that's true. Like considering, you know, the rest of Europe is being, you know, going through a not so good demographic change. Russia's really resisting it, you know, along with Poland. But no, so my whole thing was about Pizza Hook and regarding crisis actors, and basically, so like this has to do with the Jews and the blacks. So what they've always said is like this is like talk of like white supremacist groups and all this kind of stuff is that the blacks are pawns for the international Jew and the Zogs. Like,
sure.
Yeah, like all these so-called disadvantaged groups where they don't want, like, they force them into different civil societies and make people change their behavior.
They're not forced. You can't think that they're being forced into this. It's like you see the places where they come from.
Danny, it 160 years since the Emancipation Proclamation. They still can't figure out how to behave in society. It has been almost 70 years since the.
I know many well-behaved ones, Slav.
I know. Yeah, that's like literally saying I have black friends. Yeah,
I do have black friends. I have many black friends, and they're all upstanding individuals. Every single one of them.
And then the U.S. Supreme Court, obviously, 1955, Brown versus Board of Education. Ever since that's happened, academic rates have plummeted in America. And behind all these pushes for integration, civil rights has been Jews. And the two instances where I see it is, one, Rosa Parks. She was an actual crisis actor because the real victim was Claudette Colbert, a 15-year-old black pregnant girl who was told to go sit in the back of the bus. But the NAACP, she wanted to complain to the NAACP, and the NAACP said, well, you're too young, you're too pregnant, and most concerningly, she was too dark. And this is everything that she was told was by the Jewish directorates of the Birmingham, Alabama NAACP chapter. So what do? They got Rosa Parks, who got drove every day to work by her husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was like kind of a photo op kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, I see the case you're talking about. Acting. So, like with crisis actors, the one thing I want to say is like it's a weird thing because they're real. But the way they're often applied for, number one, is like speculative, right? Like, okay, so you have a mass casualty incident, a Las Vegas shooting, the unnamed elementary school in Connecticut, Parkland, all these incidents that Boston bombing as well, that often get accused of being the sort of fabricated, right? And they use crisis actors. They exist. My personal opinion is that I think the crisis acting is more likely to come into play if it is at play. Okay, hypothetically, there's an incident that happens. Let's say there's some crisis actors there. I don't think they got blood bags on the legs or anything. I think they are more likely to provide eyewitness testimony, right? That fits a particular agenda, right? If we're really truly talking about like a contrived, fabricated mass casualty event, it's more likely, especially given the high quality imagery that we now have access to on a regular basis, there's a higher likelihood that these falsehoods will be called out by the hundreds of thousands of eyes pouring over the thousands of images available of every second of a bombing, for example.
Yeah. Also with the crisis actor everybody says with the crisis actors, they're like, they cast them on, because there are real crisis actors who are set up when they do these like basically drills, right? And then that's where they have to pretend like they just got in a bomb. But like, they say they cast them on Craigslist. You're like, what do they pay them? $200 for the day?
No, it's not Craigslist. What is it? It's actually not Craigslist. I was trying to show Danny this on the last after show stream. One of the most prominent websites. You can look it up right now. It's still a functioning website. It's called crisiscast.com. Like their whole mission spiel and statement is it's like their whole thing on top is like we provide training for
crisis management, role play actors, and Crisis Cast produces disaster dramas and role play actors specially trained by psychologists.
Even before the FBI talent in Connecticut hook, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Dude, Giannis Pappas and Tim Dillon were even talking about like, yeah, dude, we know people. They were saying that they knew people personally who were being reached out to. What is it? By Crisis casting.
Yeah, they would look at them for acting for sure. But they were saying Giannis said specifically for Connecticut.
No, I was just saying, even before the incident. Bro, this is so gay that we can't even say. We can't even say what it is because.
Well, we know
it's become a habit. Yeah. It is better to be err on the side of caution. But the thing is with the unnamed school in Connecticut incident, it doesn't help anything that I believe there was a drill that was scheduled at the same time, the same day, or something along those lines, right? So there's the infamous photographs, right, of people, please sign in here, the big road sign. So a lot of that got wrapped up in the rhetoric of, this was a fabricated event. Here's why. Look, it says, please sign in. They've got these badges. There was a drill happening for the same thing at the same time. So there's confusion there. There was some suspicious stuff what was it?
They even said the drill was a cover for an excuse because there's a lot of people saying like, why are there like news vans being parked in our neighborhood? Like, in the 2 days leading up, and then they're like, oh, we just want to cover this exercise. It's like, oh, it just happened.
I mean, producer Mark, hopefully I can say this, but he's in our chat. He just says he lives in Connecticut, and he says he was getting messages not to talk about it from people I didn't know on Facebook.
Interesting. Yeah, with that, many years ago, I became pretty well versed in that, mostly as just a form of basic curiosity. I never really committed too much to believing one way or the other. I tend to lean to the idea of like these things happen. It's the rhetoric and story around them that maybe gets molded, manipulated to fit certain claims or agendas politically or otherwise, mostly politically. But here's the thing, like having looked at all of the supposedly strange evidence, I understand sometimes where a lot of these guys are coming from, because there are some repeating themes between a lot of these mass casualty incidents. Lanza was visited either by the FBI or the CIA in his younger years before the shooting because he hacked a government database, and that's kind of like, and okay, he got visited, whatever, people get visited, people do weird things, whatever. Nicholas Cruz was visited multiple times by law enforcement. Anthony Warner, the Nashville bomber, not a mass casualty incident. Both the FBI and the police had very specific tips that he was building a bomb in his RV.
Was that the AT&T building?
Yes. Yep. That was him. So in a lot of these cases, you kind of see these strange little hallmarks of repeating themes. Now that doesn't prove without a doubt that like nobody died or whatever. I'm just explaining,
I get that.
Yeah. Well, I don't have I was just gonna say I don't have $1 billion, so I believe it happened.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? The one specific thing that I do notice with the so-called mass casualty incidences, and I'm not going to be including school shootings into this because, first off, 87% of all school shootings and firearm incidences at schools are perpetrated by those of sub-Saharan and Latinx.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well,
what does that have to do with what we're talking about?
No. What is everything that's mass media about school shootings only has those with the Caucasoids.
That is true. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, no. Uvalde was a Hispanic guy. No, that's not true. It's just I don't. The thing is that they generally just don't do that much damage. They're not going to shoot up a school.
So what is it? What is it? Not just mass casualty, but mass media events. Okay, I'm going to give you guys two examples that are. It's the thing that happened in Las Vegas, and Danny, you still got to see that documentary on Route 91, and the I like to call it the Capitol kerfuffle. You know, when a bunch of patriotically concerned individuals showed up. In the weeks following the incident in Las Vegas, everyone who showed up on news cameras while it was happening on local stations, all of them were saying that everyone that was talking on the news camera was saying like they heard shots coming from different places, this, that, the other. Everything that was said on reported local news television that had not matched the local narrative. A lot of those people committed suicide.
Yeah.
The Capitol kerfuffle, 6 Capitol Hill police officers, I think is either 3 or 4 of which, of the 6, committed suicide. I don't know about you, but me personally, I know blacks don't commit suicide unless it's suicide by cop.
No, I know some.
Like,
I'm thinking
overdose don't count.
No,
it was strange.
It was actually a comic in LA who shot himself.
Damn. Yeah, there was some strange deaths. I didn't think the J6 kerfluffle, was, I'm not here to judge anybody that finds that way out of life, so to speak. I did find it a little maybe not quite balanced comparatively, like what I was seeing on my screen. You have to recall too, we had just gone through some pretty vicious protests, right? I'm not saying one thing or the other, but there was a summer filled of it. And I don't know.
Gorilla decided to overdose on fentanyl.
And it's like, I just know that some police officers either died or committed suicide after that. But even regarding the event itself, there were some interesting hallmarks of that where I feel like certain aspects of it were guided. I feel like people walked into a very obvious trap. And there's footage of this that shows some curious things, them being led into the premises. And I'm sure they have an explanation for all of that. I know there's trials, there's this, there's that, there's been endless news coverage on it. So I'm sure they have their explanations for everything. I'm sure they also ignored a bunch of stuff. I mean, I know that they've ignored a bunch of stuff. There's plenty of footage about things that we can clearly see, but they won't really bring up, So in my opinion, events like that are, I don't want to say orchestrated, but I want to say that some parts of it are manipulated so people behave in favorable ways to the adversary. Speculative, but with Las Vegas, regardless of what it was, that's another example where the media seemed to be like going out of their way to like not really mentioning these strange stories of multiple shooters. I mean, we even had EMTs reporting being pinned down by a shooter at the Tropicana. I mean, there was bullet casings on the street that were found, multiple reports. And as you said, there were some strange deaths too. I think one of the women got hit by a car or something like that. There's incidents where some had their phones taken. I recall a vague memory about their phones being taken and having the original footage wiped from the phone upon return.
One of them got murdered by an alien. That's what they let all these aliens in.
Oh man, is that true? That sucks.
Illegal, people who don't belong here.
We got that.
Yeah.
All right, Slav, I gotta let you go. We have a bunch of other callers. We don't have much time, but thank you, Slav. I'll talk to you tomorrow night.
See you, man.
Okay, let's take another call here. Phone lines are closed, everybody. Don't
Good
call
calls
in.
though.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Danny?
How's it going? Who are we speaking with? David here?
Yeah, this is David. What's up, Memoryhold?
What's up, David?
Yeah, I'm gonna change it. Not much, man. I kind of got a bone to pick with you, honestly.
Pick it, man. I'm ready to hear it.
All right. Yeah. No. Hey, I'm a huge fan, but so the other day you were kind of like in one of your recent videos you put out, you were kind of poking fun at people who are into Gematria.
Right.
I think you didn't outright say it, but I'm pretty sure I could pick up on it. But yeah. So anyway, another thing I learned from you was about the Israeli art students on 9/11 or whatever. They were working in like the 91st floor. Okay.
Sure.
So
Yep.
they put up. Yeah. So they put up E-Team, right, in lights or whatever on the Twin Towers. You remember that?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
when you put in E-Team in the reverse cipher, so Z is 1, Y is 2, X is 3, so on and so on. That equals 91. So,
Shit.
just a little something I wanted to bring up to you there, but I could go on and on about that.
Are you big Gematria guy? There's something going on with your phone. I don't know if it's like feedback or something, but it's.
I got you on speaker. Is this better?
Yeah, try that.
Yeah, Gematria is
I had you on
interesting though.
speaker.
I've probably shitted on it a few times though, in terms of like
we have one caller, Chris, who
deep.
calls in. My whole issue with it, and I've said it a million times, is it's not predictive in any way. It's always like after the fact, and you go, well, if it should be.
Yeah, it is. Well, the reason I think it's not predictive and that we can't predict it, I think it's just kind of gotten popular over the past like maybe 5-6 years at least. I've been following it for like 4, and I think there's other people out there been doing it longer, but. I think
for sure
if you get better at it, I don't know, like it is hard to predict stuff with it. So I don't know how useful it is. I'll be the first to say that. But I just think it's interesting. I'm not living my life by it or anything, but it's just interesting stuff. And, I think it goes into like the occult mindset of like what these people believe, because it's obviously like closely related to like Kabbalah and, all that sort of ancient occult practice. Like Aleister Crowley's written about Gematria. And I don't know, maybe it's something you could like look into for you do the EMA things on Patreon that I follow.
Yeah, you got it.
The elite mindset. So I don't know,
man.
Something to keep open to. So
cool.
No, I appreciate that. I'm glad you brought that up, man. Thank you for the call.
I wanted to get, we're trying to get that one guy, his name's Zach something, who's like the main Gematria guy on YouTube or whatever. And I know he has a Patreon where he's like, it's all about sports gambling. So I think he says it is predictive actually, because Zach Hubbard and but his whole thing is he's like, it is predictive. And that's how he like makes money betting on sports. And you're like,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know his track record.
They might have like some supercomputer doing all this stuff, like who knows what kind of technology they have or like what deeper understanding of it they have. But I think the elite definitely use this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I've seen a lot of, sorry to interrupt, Danny. I was just gonna say, I think the occult stuff and Gematria, I started with the occult stuff. I'm not incredibly knowledgeable, but I've become acquainted with sort of like the basics at the very least, right? And been able to shift it from something that I used to think was just not really practiced in any significant manner by a wide population. And maybe it's not a wide population, but I know now that it is a guiding light, so to speak, for some people, more powerful people than I would have expected, to be honest. At least that's what it seems to be from, their interviews, the images they share, things like that. But I will say that if you read things like S.K. Bain's The Most Dangerous Book in the World, right? 9/11 as a Mass Ritual. That's a fascinating book because that analyzes, now I'm not going to say accurate, whatever, it's all in interpretation, subjectively to a degree, but that uses Crowley's system, his mode of thinking, with Thelma or Thelema and some of the other things used into, but they analyze the 9/11 events as if it were a ritual. And I have to, as outrageous as it sounds, you read this and it actually matches quite well, but it wraps up in the Kabbalah, right? These ancient mystery schools of thought. And it's all a matter of, I guess the point of it is communicating the intent of an event covertly. Now, I don't want to pretend to know the actual, like, why they do that, but I have to admit, like, I've seen things where I just wonder, how much of a coincidence is that? I don't necessarily ascribe to the idea of 9/11 as a ritual, but I got to admit, like, there seems to be symbolic aspects to it. You know, I mean, if you look at the new, there's shit, I wish I had it in front of me. I was literally writing an essay the other day that went into that because I started to get into like the Gematria side of it. And I definitely poked fun at it because I've seen some real wacky stuff, you know what I mean? And plus it's kind of like
people take it to weird places for sure.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh,
but
definitely.
make no mistake, like I think it's very fascinating to look into, especially with things like 9/11, where the numerals, right? Just you look at the plane, the flight numbers, right? The floor that they hit.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff with the flight numbers.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And that art team too, like I do think that's worthy of looking into for people that might not know about it. But there was an art and residency program happening during 9/11 and leading up to it, where these guys lived in the World Trade Center buildings. They're the only people permitted to do so. And there was a group of guys up there. One group was called E-Team. The other group was called Gelatin, both of which produced artwork that seemed eerily prophetic and had to do with the towers. One drawing was about a guy leaping from the towers and seemed to have these strange messages that seemed relevant to the events that were about to happen. Okay, that has some people wondering, did these guys have some degree of foreknowledge, right? So number one, the one group was up there. They built an illegal balcony and stood outside of it.
Yeah, for the
around
art, the art thing that they were doing.
You got it. And of course, it's in this like weird white ritual garb, and they're holding like, you know, their hands clasped in prayer. And then you have the images, that same group that did that, they have these drawings of people leaping from the World Trade Center towers, notations that say, last chance to open a parachute, next to the building with an arrow pointing down. Just very creepy things. In the balcony's location on the drawing looks more like a gaping hole, precisely where the tower was impacted by the plane. You've got these strange things. And remember, this comes 1 year after the largest spy ring in domestic U.S. history was broken up, right? Which was an Israeli art student spy ring, which seemed to be dedicated to passive surveillance. They'd send out a team of 5-6 Israeli art students, or people that claimed to be from these universities. Some of those universities existed. Some of them lied about the universities, but their art was apparently shitty. But what was weird about it was, this for real. So, and that was a giveaway. A lot of these federal agents that they were visiting, they'd roll up in a van, they'd get dropped off in neighborhoods or parts of the city where federal buildings were, DEA headquarters, FBI branches, stuff like that. And they'd walk into these buildings and they'd sketch the interior of them. Sometimes they would try to solicit their paintings. Hey, can you buy these paintings? It'll help me with school, right? And they would show the paintings, but they're like bad. Like the testimony from some of these people, the agents, were saying, like, I don't even think these people were artists. It was so bad, And what was strange was they began showing up, and it was exclusively federal government buildings, okay? Different branches, DEA, FBI, like I said. But even stranger still was they showed up sometimes to private, unlisted private residences of DEA agents, FBI agents. And this was all happening just to sell their art. It's like, what the hell, man? Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out that they had this front going on with mall kiosks that was part of a cell. They were selling like these remote control helicopters or something. It was strange. We don't know what they were doing. However, what's really weird, according to some DEA paperwork, they did a report on them. They noticed the strange occurrences of where the art students were living at the time, and how they were always within like a half mile or 1 mile radius of one of the 9/11 hijacker cells when they were living here before the attacks. So
really?
So the ongoing theory was that they were dispatched. Art students was the cover, and they were shadowing the hijacking cell, right? Of course, that begs the question, why didn't they tell us? Why didn't they give us better intel? Okay, you could take that angle. You can also take the angle, Israel's complicit. That's the evidence. Okay, you can take that too. I don't know what to make of it. I just know that 1 year later, after that was broken up, you have these strange artists that people are saying are Israeli. They say they're from Germany, but their accents don't seem German, at least from their videos. very strange, man. I can go on about it, but they did some pieces of work where it's just oddly prophetic. I'll leave it off with E-Team. They had people stand up at the window of the World Trade Center. They brought a helicopter out. They had them wave out of the window. But man, if you look at the footage from the helicopter, it's almost as if, and I know this is cynical and kind of silly sounding, but it's almost as if they made people reenact the very thing that would happen like a month down the line, because that's precisely what the footage looks like of the people, the victims waving after the impact, trapped, people waving their shirts and shit. Right. So again, that gets into speculative, like this occult, secretly communicating the intent type of deal, that bleeds into the gematria, the occult predictive programming stuff. But yeah, that's interesting topic, man. One of my favorites just because of how interesting it is, even from a non-malicious perspective. Can you imagine being an artist that's allowed to live in the World Trade Center, man? What an opportunity.
Crazy.
Yeah, weird stuff. But yeah, I'll get off the phone now, Danny. Let you take another call.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. And this is a good time to announce that this podcast is actually sponsored by our new sponsor, Urban Moving Systems, for all your moving needs.
Great movers. They got a lot of space.
Best movers.
Their decals are great too. Graphic design.
Great.
They did
moving.
up
one of the top moving companies in the New York area. Check them out. All right, two more callers, and then we're going to wrap this up. We got, I don't know who this is, but we said, hello. You're on Low Value Mail. Who am I speaking with? Hey.
Hey, it's James from PA. How are you doing?
James from PA. How you doing, man?
What's up, James?
Doing well. It's been years since I called, so I figured I'd
how you been, man?
Give a good one since all the kids are asleep. I've been all right. I divorced now, but last time you talked to me, actually, they had me on a bunch of tranquilizers, so I probably made zero fucking sense. So
yeah, I'm sorry to hear, man.
Oh man, yeah.
That's cool. Oh, 1 second. Before she woke up as soon as I got unmuted.
That's how it goes.
You're good. So, actually, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and I know this will probably be a weird thing to ask, Danny, are you able to get the audio from a YouTube clip to play in the stream?
Right now, no.
2-minute clip.
No, I don't have it. But if you want to give me the link, I'll drop the link in the chat so people can reference it.
Yeah, it's interesting for everyone if they haven't seen it already.
Okay.
General Wesley Clark, it's 7 countries in 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I think everybody kind of needs to keep referring back to that. Just to make sense of a lot of different things.
This is a memo of how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, 7 minutes, 51 seconds. Democracy Now?
Yeah.
That sounds about right. That is an important detail to remember. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just spam the chat with it so people can go watch it.
Even though it's been way past 5 years, we're towards the end of the list, it's looking like.
What were the 7 countries?
Oh, I have them written down, but I know Syria is towards the end.
Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right there. Yeah. And as far as I know, I looked into that, and that's like a solid. That was his testimony. He's on video. He does say that he was told, because I believe the context is that one of his colleagues, right, probably another high-ranking military guy. I'm just kind of going to generalize here, but listeners and viewers, you guys should definitely listen to that. It's like a key piece of.
Mark says Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Jordan, Kuwait.
There it is. And, you can look down the list and just compare that. Yeah, they didn't make it in the timeline they set out, which, to be honest, was ambitious as hell. But he was surprised. The only reason General Wesley Clark said that was because he said, did you hear? We're going to war. And General Wesley Clark was like, what are you talking? That's awfully quick, in other words. There's something like that. He's like, who are we going to war against? I mean, it wasn't, military necessarily that attacked us. I mean, so anyway, he said that quote in the context of being surprised at the news that we were mobilizing for like a full scale invasion. And then the guy was like, whoever told him this, he was like, it gets worse than that. It's not just the one country. I mean, apparently they want 7 countries in 5 years or whatever. So when I looked into it, I believe him. I believe him.
And it gives a lot of basis for a lot of different things. a lot of it looks like chaos, and a lot of people are scared. And I think the best thing to do is understand how much control we have in the situation, which is zero.
Yeah. If we stay asleep, and it's a tall order for us to all wake up. I like to remember that we live in such an age where technology is so crazy that a large amount of control can be wielded by a small amount of people. And most people in the world, there's 7.5 billion of us. I like to think most people would give their neighbor food if they were hungry or starving. I think that's why these people rely so heavily on spell casting, is what I call it, right? This is why they so heavily rely on media distortion, social media, algorithmic fuckery, the creation of different hellscapes to trap you in, echo chambers and things like that. These are really easy tools to remotely control or modify behavior covertly and from a distance. And even better, it doesn't require any real external source aside from an iPhone, right? Which is why there's no competitors to iPhone. It has to be standardized in order to work. If you had different phones with different capabilities, that wouldn't be very good, right? You need to have a standard method of mental, ideological modification, right? To better sway the hive mind. When you watch birds in flocks, there's a name for it, and they suddenly turn and it looks really cool in the sky. It's like that, they just drop a stimulus onto the internet, maybe a trending hashtag, maybe a this, maybe a that, and you can mobilize a very good amount of people. And just going off what you said, I think that's it's true. But I like to remember, man, if we can just get rid of the tech control or this is fanciful thinking. I just think people really would turn around on some of this stuff if they would just release their grip and reliance on these legacy systems, step out of the echo chamber. You know what I mean? But
right,
there's no signs of that quite yet. But here's the hoping.
It's a tall ask.
Yeah, big time.
The echo chambers got so bad through COVID, and they weren't very good before COVID. So I think there definitely is power in the collective. I would, the way I see it is everybody's so damn scared to do anything that my first thing being what I'm trying to do. I know, but the first time I ever called, Danny told me to run for office.
I remember you had a very impassioned
I should have told him he was out of
speech.
his mind. I should have told you you're out of your mind. But no, I think I'll do better with trying to lessen the fear and the division in the poor side of things, and really, because that's when people really start getting together, is when they feel comfortable enough to do so. And I'm going through the music side of things for that, but off of me and that, I think the only other thing I wanted to bring up was, and you guys can talk about this for however long you want. Do you think the AI systems, how they came about, I believe that they were released into the public the way they were on purpose to make a bunch of chaos, so then regulation could be forced and only Altman and Musk could basically control from the top level down every type of they own whatever is made through AI now, right? Depending upon what it's made from, what LLM.
Yeah.
I'm not incredibly educated on it, but that's the way it looks. It's like anything you make, you have to go onto their stores to be able to for people to use.
It's like their ecosystem.
It's a good point. It's incredibly disruptive, AI. I don't think there's any way to release it without significantly disrupting society. I've been reading a lot of these, they call them global strategic trend reports, and they're funded by military entities like the Army War College, for example, and they fund these nonprofits, these NGOs, and they basically say, hey, I need you to look at current trends in order to predict future and emerging threats, in order to us to make a roundtable and discuss ways that we can combat these potentials, right? And that is one of the main concerns of the military, is alignment, right? Alignment with wider societal morals, ethics, and values, right? It's like values, excuse me. It's like, imagine dropping some type of laser device, right, into 1500s civilization. Okay, I mean, so they can pretend it can vaporize people, pretend it can do all sorts of stuff, right? That would be a huge amount of power in the hands of people that aren't ready. They haven't acquired the wisdom to use that yet. My point is that that's what
Even
AI
just picking
is.
a cell phone back then.
Right. It's like big enough as it is. So when you put AI in here, by the way, a watered down one, the only reason that we don't have like the full capabilities publicly isn't because, you know, they've hit a ceiling in terms of capabilities. They have. It's just that the public's capabilities and access to GPT and these AI systems is a reduced version of what the people developing them have. Of course, that makes sense, right? But if you were to just release what they had in just one shot, I mean, the effects to society would be devastating to at least certain parts of it. We've already seen tens of thousands of jobs wiped out in different industries. You know, graphic design is going to go, like all these, like, you know, people that design thumbnails and websites and all this shit for a period of time is going to be AI generated. I hate to be a cynic, but like, that's why it's just not released all at once. I think they got to roll this out slowly, which is why alignment is such a big deal. And that's what the military is concerned about too, where, okay, we have alignment, but what about China's AI? How are they going to align it, right? They're going to align it with their worldview, with their systems. They view their humans, their citizens different than we do. How do you deal with that? But then we got to keep up. So does that mean we have to stoop to their level, so to speak, and like unleash this shit on our population just to keep up militarily? So there's a big issue, and there's a reason why the open AI people, you know, on the safety team like resigned. There's some controversy going around that circle that I feel. I'm not entirely educated, but something's going on in the works. Yeah, big time.
All right, James, I gotta let you go, man. We gotta wrap this up.
All right, man. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Good talking to you, man. James from PA, everybody. All right, that's been the show. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. Thank you to Memoryhold. This was very illuminating, if you will. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on Memoryhold 5.0 on YouTube, but that's only my partial video catalog. Head over to BitChute. That's bitchute.com/Memoryhold. That's where I've been allocated to and permitted to continue making videos. YouTube is the safe stuff. Since I'm scattered in the wind, the best way to locate my stuff is probably through my Linktree, which is, you know, Linktree and then thememoryhold.
Cool. And I'll put all the links down below.
Yeah. And all my documentaries are listed there. Pizzagate 2020, that I did the research for with Melty Buddha, Pizza for Your Family, my documentaries. You guys will see them. But yeah, check it out. I try to bring some reasonable, rational thinking to the popular conspiracies that you hear about every day.
Cool. Thank you much for joining me. Thank you, everyone on YouTube and on Rumble and all of you who are gifted the channel memberships. I appreciate you all and the super chats. I didn't miss them, actually. I did miss one of them, but it was one of them from Dylan, which said something about don't say this guy's name. So then I was like, I'm not going to say this guy's name, but I do appreciate them. Thank you very much, everybody. Shout out to lovely producer Mark for helping me out with this. It makes it so much better. Good night. See you. Empathic abilities, yeah, my face be also stoic. Bleep, blow up, nigga, that just means I'm working. They see me as a leader, so that's why I'm Captain Kirkin. These tracks from the stars, that much is for certain. You can feel this hit if you up or if you hurt. I'm raising my stock, not talking my feet in some Birkin. Number Johnny 5, got a fucking short circuit. Bring the track to life when I speak phenomenally. When I hit, she feel that shit in her abdominals. These rappers make me laugh like comic view, they comically. You know I got a ball out, I hit the track running just like Sonic do. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah, they was trying to get me on my hype shit. Yeah. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah. And they tried to down me up some KO type shit. Yeah. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah. Now we pulling up fresh on some flight shit. Ha. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah. They was trying to get me on my hype shit. Yeah. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah. And they tried to down me up some KO type shit. Yeah. They don't wanna turn on my light switch. Yeah.